Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone. Sorry for being a couple minutes late, but we're glad to have you here. Please note the board convened an executive session prior to this public meeting to consider discussions regarding proposed pending or current litigation, as well as collective negotiations pursuant to the Taylor Law, Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. But we'll now call our public meeting to order, and we will start by asking everyone to please rise. We say the pledge, and I believe we have some assistance from someone who's going to help us sign today, one of our students. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay, we will start tonight with some student recognition. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? What I'd like to do? I'd like to ask for a motion to move up the report of our SGO representatives so we can have everyone hear the work of our student leaders. So is there a motion to move the SGO report up to right now? In a second, everyone, any discussion of that? All in favor? All right. All right, guys, take it away. You can introduce yourselves too, so these everyone can hear you and see you.
Hi, I'm Sammy. I'm one of the two SGO presidents. This is Mikey. And so what I want to first talk about is last night, the World Language National Honor Society inducted new members. I served as a Latin officer and inducted one new member. It was really nice. It was a nice ceremony. It was pretty short and went pretty quickly. Next week, besides Memorial Day, of course, we're having SGO-based spirit days, one for each day of the week leading up to Moving Up Day, just to like kind of wrap in and like rise that like student morale, just like as the year comes to a bit of a lull. Also, AP and IB tests are over. The exam session or the 3 weeks long period that's over, which everybody I think is very grateful for. Mikey, what do you have to say?
This week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is big for the arts. We had each ensemble went to NYSSMA majors. All of them performed really well. That was really good. Also, tomorrow we have the Cactus Cup, where kids will be playing spike ball to win a $500 Cactus Cafe gift card. So that's very interesting. And most of the spring sports have came to an end. Track teams, both of them won counties, which was great. And the girls lacrosse team has a game tomorrow at 5:30 at Delphi. Semifinals. They'll probably make the finals, so that'd be great too. And yeah.
Also, the 8th graders all visited the high school this week. They each came. Each like team of 8th graders came Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, periods 1 and 2. They all watched a panel of peer leaders, so 12th graders, discussed like common like misconceptions about the high school, and then we each took like 2 to 3 of us. I'm also a peer leader. Took like a group of the middle schoolers and showed them around the school, and it was just like a little nice experience before their orientation, so that they can start getting familiar with the high school.
That's great. I happened to be there on Wednesday, and I saw some of the groups going through, and it was great. The kids every year, that eagerness, that excitement, the nerves, but it helps to have you guys as their peer leaders walking through it. So that was great. Is that spoon contest resolved?
There are, as of right now, 5 contestants left.
Okay, very good. We have some younger kids in the audience. They can hear all the good stuff to look forward to. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Just want to thank you for the Cactus Cup idea. I know your favorite bureaucrat, Dr. Z, threw some rules in there with Mr. Contreras, but we really love the idea. It was excellent. Thank you for your innovation and creativity.
Thanks, guys. So I will turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Zublionis, who will lead us in some student recognition.
Okay, great. Well, another great night of recognition. We have many students here. We're eager to talk about your great accomplishments. So recognition team assemble. We're going to go down to the floor here and get set up. Okay, would first grader Savannah Crawford and Miss Hild please come up? First grader Savannah Crawford from Miss Hild's class at Seacliff School has been chosen as the winner of the Nassau County Reading Council's Young Authors Contest for a story she wrote about making pancakes. Savannah used everything she learned in Miss Hild's class about writing, choosing a small moment to describe in detail. At the Seacliff level, one of the judge's favorite parts was when Savannah described the oil splattering, great word, and hitting her arm, and she included the dialogue, Uchiwawa. Savannah, you really made your pancake experience come alive for your readers. Savannah's work will be published in a book that will be distributed to school libraries throughout Nassau County. She will be honored at a ceremony on June 1st, along with other winners from grades K through 12 from Nassau County. Savannah, congratulations. Would Jack Endress please come up? We are thrilled to honor Jack Endress's achievement in winning first place in the News Literacy Project's Pitch It Essay Contest. Jack's work, which was judged by a panel of journalists, involved researching a local, national, or international story where having news literacy skills would have prevented misinformation from being spread. Using that current events as a lens, Jack explained how the First Amendment protects freedom of the press, how citizens can fact-check well-known figures, and how consuming and sharing reliable information are vital civic responsibilities. Jack earned a monetary award, entry into the News Literacy Project's Grand Prize competition, and participation in a small group Zoom session with renowned journalists providing feedback about his article pitch. These honors convey Jack's aptitude for using his voice as a catalyst for positive change in schools and communities. Jack, great job and congratulations. Sophia Glazarev, please come up. Congratulations to Sophia for winning the North Shore High School Writing Center's Haiku Contest. In Sophia's poem, Echoes of Yesterday, the themes of optimism, practicality, and an insightful declaration of hope relieve the challenges of our own lives. We thank her poetic expertise. Congratulations, Sophia. Would Mr. Julian Zazullo please come up? Congratulations to Julian Zazzulo, percussionist in the high school band, for being awarded the NMEA, Nassau Music Educators Association Summer Scholarship Award. Julian has been accepted into the M-Pulse Percussion Program at the University of Michigan, a one-week intensive musical training program in July where he will work with world-class educators and other talented musicians from around the country. This scholarship only goes out to one person in Nassau County each year. That's one person in the whole county. This scholarship only, congratulations to Julian for his continued perseverance and commitment to excellence in all of his musical endeavors. We are very proud to have him in our band and look forward to hearing about his outstanding experience. I wanted to say the only one in Nassau County 3 times. I almost did. Great job, Julian. Okay. Our Long Island Math Fair award winners. The annual Long Island Math Fair is a math research competition that represents the culmination of a year-long research project in mathematics. Each of the students being recognized tonight took on an independent study in a mathematical topic of their choice, wrote an academic research paper demonstrating a depth of knowledge, and prepared a 10 to 15-minute presentation that was delivered and evaluated before peers and judges at the Long Island Math Fair at Hofstra University. Under the guidance of math teachers Kristen Frailer and Charles Wenkel, North Shore students achieved outstanding results. The students who earned medals are here tonight. Their names and research topics are, and we're going to call up our middle school students first. Middle school, Ruby Brock Tarkashenvan, bronze for fractals. Bryn Paulinski, bronze medal for mathematics and tennis. And if you guys would stay up here. Miss Ann Kelly, silver, Fibonacci sequence. Mahavira, silver for population dynamics. And Avery DiMiola, gold for logic. Congratulations. And now our high school winners. Ashley Holden, bronze for general rotations and coordinate geometry. Jasmine Coe, bronze for chaos theory. Mr. Noah Lee, silver for reflections and curves. Jessica Leonard, silver for computation modeling of nerve impulse transmission. Jack Kaufman, silver for map projections. Rishi Malhotra, gold for natural occurrences of E. Harrison Levin, gold for analysis of factors correlated to global hunger. And can we please have Miss Amy DiMiola come up, take a picture with these fine award winners? Thank you. I have to say, we talk a lot about authentic learning. You'll hear a little bit about that in the presentation this evening. And those topics just really show the connection that you're making with mathematics learning in the classroom to the real world. So thank you, students, teachers, and Ms. DiMiola for great work. Next are mathletes. One of North Shore's 8th grade teams took second place at the regional MoMathlon tournament hosted by the National Museum of Mathematics, also known as MoMath. The tournament requires students to compete both individually and collaboratively and tackle unusual problems, which require a highly developed aptitude for problem solving. Because of their ranking, this team was invited back to compete at MoMath's Tournament of Champions at their museum in Manhattan. Under the leadership of math teacher Kristen Frailer, the members of this accomplished mathlete team are Ruby Brock Tarkashavand, Casey Gates, Paolo Wang, Mahia Vera, and Paulina Semenko. Please come up, students. I'm not sure if Ms. Frailer is here, but if so, would Ms. Frailer please come up, and Ms. DiMiola again. Okay, we have one more category of students that we want to recognize. I'm going to ask our cheerleading coach, high school cheerleading coach, and athletes to come up. So would Coach Jen Freeman please come up? And our cheerleaders, Philomena Barba, Rylan Kirker, Juliana Ferrari, Jade Fairborn, Nicoletta Fidelos, Juliana Melli, Deirdre O'Donohue, Alexandra Silva, Diana Roper, Emily White, and Juliana Zaccagnino. So I'm kind of quoting Coach Jen's words here as we hand out the awards, but I just want to say I'm so proud of this group and also the amazing community that the parents have established, and we've been wanting to recognize them for a long time. They've been doing some great work, not only to build up their own program and going to nationals in Florida this year again, but also for the service to the community. They've been doing clinics with younger students all year, raising funds, really amazing. We're so proud of you. So as Coach Jen writes, when I stepped in as head coach this winter, our competition team was small and young. It was expected that it would be a rebuilding year as they had lost a considerable number of kids from the previous year. But from day one, this team proved that neither inexperience nor size was going to keep them out. With only weeks to learn their routine and build their skills, they took to the mat in December and surprised everyone, including themselves, by hitting their routine and scoring high enough to earn their place at nationals in Florida. Their determination to not let anything keep them down was inspiring as they continued to work through obstacles throughout the winter, showing up at nationals in February with their best performance of the season. Each one of these girls worked endlessly all year to be a better athlete, student, teammate, and friend. I could not be prouder to stand behind them on this journey and look forward to what they will continue to bring to the North Shore Cheer program. Congratulations, students, and congratulations, Coach. And at the risk of embarrassing her, I have to recognize one senior, Emily White, who'll be going to Boston University next year. Congratulations, Emily. I have known her since second grade. Great job. Thank you all. And I want to say a special thank you to Miss Ritter, who I didn't mention before, for our English awards and the well-written descriptions of those awards. You know that's Miss Ritter's writing. And thank you to Mr. Lang for your help with athletics. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on with our agenda. The approval of the minutes from our May 4th meeting. Does anyone have any changes or comments? Okay, thank you. We'll consider them adopted. We will ask for a motion on approval of the treasurer's report. I heard it in a second, please. Thank you. Any comments or questions? All in favor of its approval? Aye. Good. Action 6, which are the approval of budget transfers. Is there a motion? And a second? Thank you. Comments or questions? All in favor of their adoption? Thank you. Action item 7, the approval of our claims audit report from April. Is there a motion? And a second? Thank you. Comments or questions? Just one exception noted out of 402. That's for $264, but they caught it. So that's good. Thanks, Jamie. Good work. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Report from the SGO we did. So we'll move on to report from our superintendent, Dr. Zublionis.
Thank you so much. It has been a great week, as Mikey and Sammy were recollecting. We had an excellent day, or days, I should say, in NISMA majors. And I want to recognize Miss Dalia Rodriguez, who's here, our Director of Fine Performing Arts. And she's been informing us of the up-to-the-minute accolades of our high school NISMA majors performers. NISMA majors are group competitions and evaluations. And we've had our high school jazz band, Magical Singers, and Concert Chorale receive gold, and our high school band received gold with distinction, which is extremely rare. Today, our high school freshman string ensemble received a silver, and our high school grades 10 through 12 string ensemble received a gold, and chamber orchestra also received a gold. So job well done to our high school musicians. Very proud of you. And similarly, on the athletic front, we've had a great week. Yesterday, Mr. Lang had organized the spring letter of intent signing, which was a very special day. I feel bad I couldn't be there. I was at a Nassau County Superintendent's Conference. I love going to those. Great number of students recognized. And one stat that came out of that, and we were talking to Mr. Contreras about this, is that, do you know that 10% of our graduating students are going to be college athletes? I mean, I think that's just an amazing number. So congratulations, students, on your future endeavors. Another award or students that I want to recognize were 3 of our varsity women golfers, and Mr. Dayhill has been doing great work. We had 3 varsity women golfers, including Julia Kaiser, Bree Gugliano, and Sophia Boccarino, who qualified to play in the Nassau County tournament in Bethpage this past Monday. Coach Dayhill said, we're so happy to have 3 girls qualify for the county tournament this year at Bethpage. That's a huge accomplishment for our girls and our golf program in general. So great job. We're very proud of you. I could do this all day. I really just want to recognize our amazing kids and faculty. Our North Shore Boys lacrosse team, high school varsity team, had a great season. It did end a couple of days ago, but they made it to the second round of the playoffs. I have to say, similar to what I was saying about the cheerleaders, the camaraderie, the work that they've done, the tribute that they did for Garen Hagen in Long Beach, It's been an amazing season. I'm very proud of everybody's Instagram presences. They're branding their teams, they're building a community, and it's really excellent. So great job, boys lacrosse. And as Michael mentioned before, girls lacrosse is still going. They are playing tomorrow evening against Rockville Center's Southside High School. They're playing at Adelphi University for the semifinals. As we know, our girls lacrosse team is highly ranked, I believe number 21 in the nation. They're having a great year, and again, another great community. So we're excited for the hard work that Miss McCormick had done in the past to build them up for Coach Stevens' work now is having a great season. So go Vikings, go tomorrow night. And I have more, if you can believe it. This one won't be surprising. Our Nassau County Class A track and field championships were earned by both our boys and girls track and field teams. So last night at Carl Place High School, the North Shore boys and girls teams both won their respective county Class A track and field championships. So congratulations to Coach Levy, Coach Millard, Coach Welch. They defeated 17 other schools from the county, and they're going to be participating next week in the state qualifier competition. That's June 1st and June 2nd here at North Shore High School. And I should also mention that for girls lacrosse, you can buy tickets on gofan.com if you would like to attend tomorrow night. Just a couple of reflections I wanted to make before we move into our general discussion tonight. Thank you to all who are here and who are in the community who voted, regardless of your vote. We really appreciate your participation. Obviously, it was a close vote. As a social studies teacher and a political scientist, sort of, I couldn't help but reminisce of the election of 2000 or other close elections in American history, and perhaps the 1960 election as well. But there are lessons to be learned from that and reflections to be made. And I just want everybody to know, regardless of where you stood on the budget, how seriously we take that. I will tell you, and I think everybody knows, I do have a group here who of administrators who could testify about how much we talk about costs and saving money in the budget. They probably have a support group that they've formed because that's all I talk about this year. But they have been amazing in trying to solve problems. And we had a very unique situation this year. Every district across New York State, especially Long Island, faced tremendous inflation, namely in healthcare. So our state aid increase, and I've said this many a time, was totally erased by the health insurance increase that NYSHIP put on us. And we have to provide that as does every district. On top of that, we lost $3.5 million worth of revenue. So I called it a 1-2 punch of financial challenges. And so even after making cuts of $2.7 million and having to make some tough decisions, which we did in a way that didn't affect students for next year directly, it was very hard to do. And even though our tax levy was a higher on the percentage side, it took a lot of work to get there. We're hopeful for next year to find some efficiencies, but also to find more revenues and hopefully some more state aid. So we're continuing to work with our elected officials. Tomorrow we're meeting with Senator Martins. We continue to work with our other officials in Albany to find solutions and to hopefully generate some homegrown revenue that we generate ourselves and don't need to rely on others for. So we look forward. We're starting to plan for next year's budget already. I had the budget book home this weekend and we're getting ready to go. So thank you. Another big topic that some folks might be here to talk about tonight, and we've been talking about, is a secondary level team. Dr. Smythe and I, with Mr. Contreras, Mr. Doherty, and our directors, is what different districts are doing in terms of how they count or weigh regents and final exams. And so I just want to give a brief background on this. We were faced with a new state policy last year called the special appeal that applies to regents exams starting last June, that allows students to earn regents credit even if they don't pass with a traditional 65. If they have a 50 to 64, there's a special process called a special appeal in which they can have course credit given. It's noted on their transcript. The student must have a passing course average, however. That last year led districts, including North Shore, to have what we called reduced harm policies, only counting regents or final exams if they brought up the course average. Right now, we find that we're in a similar situation that we were in a year ago at a similar time, where districts are doing different things, and there are schools that are continuing with the reduced harm and those who aren't. So we are currently deliberating this. We're looking at numbers. We're doing quantitative analyses, and listening to everyone who is talking to us about that, including parents and teachers. And we are considering so many different options, including, leaving things as is, including the reduced harm that we did last year, including something that I've quoted as preferential weighting, meaning weighting it differently based in a way that helps students. There are so many factors that go into this. Of course, student stress and wellness from these tests. My own children are going through that in another district. Of course, the change at this point in the year is tricky. And of course, the impact on students' grades and that vis-a-vis, compared to other districts who are doing that as well. We don't want our students to be at a competitive disadvantage. So we're weighing all these factors, and we'll be making a decision, a recommendation very shortly. We understand there is a Regents exam next week on June 1st, U.S. History, brand new U.S. History Regents. So we'll be communicating it very quickly after this evening. So I'm going to transition out of that back to regular business. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Giving out the awards, I just couldn't, we talked about the arts, talked about athletics. I thought it was apropos that, certainly Michael, who's up here, had great success in the field, but also was part of that band that got that grade 6. And even one of the students that we gave a haiku award to was a student that I coached in softball through the years also. So the idea of, you're an athlete or you're in the arts is really a very, very false division here at the North Shore. Everyone's doing a lot and doing it well. Thank you, Dr. Z. I'm going to actually give it back to you for the discussion of the strategic plan and the North Shore journey.
Thank you so much. I do have a presentation we're gonna pull down in a second, and I do want to say from the outset, I want to thank Dr. Smythe, our entire administrative team who's here this evening, for all their work. This report that I'm about to give really started in March of last year when I was still assistant superintendent. I didn't know what my fate held for me, but we had done a lot of great work in the year leading up to that point on student engagement. And so what we did through the Tri-State visitation, and the Tri-State team is a consultancy of districts that visit each other and evaluate each other. They include districts from Long Island, New Jersey, and Westchester. The team came and they gave us feedback on our protocols and artifacts and documents that illustrated student engagement and student participation. We then used that over the summer, their feedback, to continue to build that framework, to make it more specific, to provide a guiding structure that could guide us through the years to come, even though the individual tasks and actions that we might take in any year might change, but to have a constant that we always go back to that represents our values, and also to try and phrase it a little differently. Instead of adult actions, what the students actually face, what they experience as they walk through the halls of school. So it really is an attempt to create a strategic plan framework through the lens and the eyes of children. And so I'm going to do a very brief presentation on this, talk about our process, then we'll answer some questions at the end. So thank you. And trustees, I do have a printed version. You may come down if you like to the floor or stay up here. That is fine, like we've been doing. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Getting my workout tonight. I just keep moving this podium. It's a new CrossFit. Good evening again, everyone. Something really amazing happened this year in the North Shore schools. We added a 14th grade, the pre-K, to Seacliff and Glenhead schools, and we'll be adding 5 more classes next year in our schools, 1 more outside of the school. So we'll have a considerable number of students, almost 100 pre-K students in the North Shore schools. So I've always referred to this as a 13-year journey, but for many of our students, it's becoming a 14-year journey. And really what we've wanted to do, and we've had many fine strategic plans over the last decade. Right before COVID, we had drafted a strategic plan that was based on 3 pillars: teaching and learning, social emotional learning, and equity and inclusion. And we realized, as I had said in the fall when we started talking about this, that the world had changed and our students had changed and their needs had evolved going through that 5-year period. So the plan, any strategic plan, I think that was drafted before COVID really needed to change and change dramatically. And so this is our attempt to do so and to address some questions that the board has been raising over the last couple of years about, how do our kids really feel when they're in school? What is going through their minds? What is directly impacting them and having a positive impact on them? So over the course of more than a year, we've been developing a framework that takes into account our overall mission and hopes for our students in a way that looks at their entire journey through our school system. Not one year, not one concept of taking an action, but how students are growing and developing over time. I always say we're in the movement business. We're in the movement business of moving children towards sophistication so that they can leave our system and do what they want to be able to do, what their dreams and hopes are. We talk about discovering your dreams in North Shore, and our hope is that all students will be engaged in assured experiences with consistency and increasing complexity so that they can discover their dreams, whatever it is that they want to do, whether that is career, whether that is trade school, whether that is the college or university or the military, whatever that is, so they have the tools to be prepared for that. So in designing this framework, we had a few simple ground rules. One is that we wanted to design it through the lens of student experiences and student needs. So student voice was a big part of how we created this framework. Several different surveys, focus groups, surveys that were given as late as a few weeks ago formed this, but really they go back to the year 2020, 2021, all of that data played in. It organizes actions or tasks into a stable or ongoing framework: meaningful and academic growth, positive relationships, interests and strengths, and wellness. What's interesting when you look at the data, especially the student survey responses, is that when students and parents and teachers were asked about meaningful learning, often their responses pointed to things like positive relationships, interests and strengths, and wellness. And when you were looking at the question about interests and strengths, you often saw references to positive relationships. Point being that the data proves something that I didn't think it would prove, but what a case I wanted to make, which is that these 4 components are interrelated. That we think of what students need and the experiences that should be assured for them in school. These 4 not only are essential, but they reinforce one another. We need wellness in order to learn. We need positive relationships in order to have positive learning. We need learning to be meaningful in order to find our interests and strengths. So all of those 4 components are essential and interdependent. And our goal is to look at these in a way where we backwards plan. We look at what students need in these areas when they leave North Shore High School. How do we reverse engineer that like we would a good unit or lesson plan, and start to think about what our students need as they're transitioning from pre-K to K so that that journey is purposeful. Along the way too, we need to continue to reinvent and look at the journey of ourselves and what our system is doing. Oftentimes when we take actions as educators, we implement a curriculum, we don't think about, and this is at large across the world, how that change travels with the student from year 1 to year 12. And that's what we're trying to do here. We are going to talk about some actions that we drew from the data for the district, but we'll be working ongoing this year with our school leadership team, our departmental leaders, to develop more building-wide and department-level actions that are more organic, that they own, that they work through with their teachers. We know that's how the most meaningful change happens. So just a brief timeline. We began with an engagement study in the fall of 2021, began collecting some data, and that prepared us for the Tri-State visitation last spring. That involved faculty feedback and artifact collection, thousands of artifacts from our teachers, interviews from the visiting team, and observations. That led to feedback and recommendations from that visiting team. We then began processing that as a leadership team last summer. We were using the book Atomic Habits to anchor our thinking, to think about what are those consistent pieces that we want students to have, even small changes that can impact students as they travel through our system. We submitted the initial framework to the board in the fall. I gave a quick presentation on how the old strategic plan related to this strategic plan. We began talking about the framework and the leadership team with more detail. And then we had fall listening sessions with parents, as well as spring listening sessions and surveys. And the surveys covered teachers, parents, and students. And then finally, we are here tonight. And so what I would like to do is kind of go through each of the areas, talk briefly about that area, that assured experience area, and the recommendations. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. This will all be posted, but also kind of illustrate how we're trying to link all of the different initiatives. If you've been a North Shore parent, resident, student, or teacher or faculty leader, you know that we've had a lot of initiatives over the past 15 years since I've been here. And what we are trying to do is to coalesce and to correlate and to make sure that these actions are organized, deliberate, and intentional, and that we're flowing and rowing together as a system. When we think about meaningful learning, we think about this quote. This is a parent of an elementary, middle school, high school students. This parent actually is a student in 1st, 6th, and 9th grade. And the parent said, "I think my children, as well as children in our school district, would benefit from opportunities for more in-school academic support, as well as individualized check-in with students." And so when we think about growth in academic proficiency and mastery, there are a couple different lenses we look at this. We look at our curriculum maps and what's actually being delivered to our students, and our directors of our curriculum areas and Dr. Smythe do an excellent job of maintaining these maps. We look at something that we're building called an MTSS plan, which is a multi-tiered system of supports. I've spoken about it at different board meetings. This is a whole plan that really gets at this parent's quote of how we are going to keep a good lookout and monitor how all students are doing and have an intentional response for intervention when students have needs. We're going to, apropos to what we were just talking about, look at assessment and grading structures and consistency to make sure that assessments capture that spirit of assessing for learning, that there's a real why behind why we are taking a test or completing a project. One topic that Ms. Ritter, Ms. Small, and Dr. Smythe have taken the lead on, along with Ms. Finder and some of our other teacher leaders, is the science of reading. There's been a lot of great new research on the science of reading, and we are moving in the direction of implementing that, especially in grades K through 2. Similarly, Dr. Smythe and Ms. DiMiola have been working on the digital fluency standards that have come out. So sometimes these changes come from above, but certainly in the case of digital fluency, there is real relevancy to that. You're going to see me refer to tech later on, because we do have concerns with technology and social media use and too much Chromebook. So that's also a wellness goal of kind of doing the right things that we need kids to learn, but also managing the balance of how there can be very negative effects of social media and tech use as well. We have to do more in that area. And then finally, one area we've talked a lot about, especially me, Mr. Minchell, Mr. Contreras, is research and developing more opportunities for research in coursework in science, social science, math, and the humanities. We have a great, strong group of students who do that. We want to expand that number, make it more accessible to more students, and scheduling has a big part to do with that. Quote from a ninth grade teacher: students need a space for direct instruction on organizational and study skills. Many of the freshmen struggle with the transition to high school in learning how to manage all of their work and adapt to new study habits. I have to say that, bless you, having a study skills framework, and we sometimes folks will talk about it in terms of executive functioning, and those two things are not exactly the same, but that we need to deliberately help guide our students in how to manage their brains, how to manage their functions, how to organize. Oftentimes, I see it with my own children. We all recollect from our own experiences. I remember having a math teacher saying to me, okay, now you go home and you learn this. And I remember thinking, I thought I was supposed to be learning it now in math class, fourth period. But I think we need to pay more attention to using time to teach students how to learn as part of their process in class. And so creating a skills framework for students, study skills framework for students in grades 2 through 12, we're going to start to look at trainings like universal design for learning and visible learning. These are research-based trainings that we know lead to tremendous student success and access for students. Collegial circles on the development of curiosity and constructivist learning, and creating new opportunities for students to engage in challenging learning. And these are district efforts. And just to dive into the framework a little bit, when we were organizing this work, we wanted to associate each of these bigger categories with a shared valued outcome, which is the bedrock of all we do. Also, you'll see an annotation to the Silver Strong evaluation framework. This is how we establish goals around our work with teachers and our whole learning community. So we're trying to make linkages between all that we do. One thing that you don't see in here, and I'd argue it's part of UDL in terms of the actions, is being a joyful learner. You know, and there's much research and many anecdotes about what's something that happens in fourth grade. When students go past fourth grade, student learning becomes less fun, and we don't know why that is. Testing, certainly, and the demands of secondary school has something to do with that, but we want to dig into that. And I think we do have a high amount of joy in our learning in the secondary level, but we want to look at that. If you look at Dr. O'Hara's Twitter page on a given day, and what the work their directors and our principals are doing at the high school level, there is a tremendous amount of joy, but we want to look at those students and make sure everybody's engaged, and look at how we can create more joy in learning. And finally, something I'd argue that we're very strong in is meaningful and authentic learning. This has been our focus with our faculty this year. Every faculty member's professional learning plan related to authentic learning has done amazing work with things like field trips, inviting in authentic speakers, authentic audiences, members of the community. I think this is an area that can do more. And here's a great example of where the research really shows that meaningful learning, when you create meaningful learning connections, schema, it leads to greater gains in traditional academic learning. There is no doubt and no debate. And so the extent to which we can continue to do this, and I really want to stress continue because we've been doing so much of this. This is a major strength of being in the North Shore schools. We want to keep that as a value that we always go back to. This is a quote from a fourth grade student. I think of our FLES and STEAM program. I think our FLES and STEAM program is a fun program for every student because FLES will help us during our life by learning another language to communicate in different ways. And STEAM helps us get through our problems by learning how to problem solve, to be problem solvers, engineers, and coders. So I thought that summed it up really well, the connection to real life. We want to continue to do this by looking for a framework for outdoor learning, something we've been talking about doing since COVID, really embedding the notion of why into curriculum maps, which our directors have already done to a large extent. And when we visit lessons and teachers visit each other, asking that why question, why are we learning this? What is the purpose? How does that relate to the world outside of school? And looking to continue to embed field experiences and performance-based assessments in curriculum maps. Okay. The next bigger category is positive relationships. And this is really about school culture, how students relate to one another, and how students deal with difference and differences in each other. Just a couple of quotes here to share. Positive relationships can be fostered in many ways. One way to embrace this further would be to involve more mentorships across grades, perhaps even across schools, including middle school and high school. And that's an elementary school teacher. That is a theme. One of the things that we do when we get the survey data is we read it, we go through it. We also use what we call coding programs where we run code. And now with AI, there are so many of those tools out there. We use old school ones where they basically take the lines of what students have said anonymously and kind of show you what the themes are. This is a theme. Mentoring is a word that comes up so much. It's so interesting, the high frequency themes that come up. Another quote from a 10th grade student: I would love to have an Asian Appreciation Culture Month like there is one for the Hispanic community. I think that to expose students to different cultures is always great. As a person who's from East Asia, I would love to see it. And 3 areas of positive relationships that we think should be assured experiences: the citizenship and positive relationship piece, and that involves creating strong bonds between peers and adults, and also having students contribute positively to the school community. We've talked about community service opportunities, organizing that, structuring that in a way that opens up possibilities for students, helps them to really archive their experiences. While we know this is not the reason why, this is not the why, I want to say that, we do know that as students move on past high school, whether it's college or something else, community service and students' passion for community service is becoming an increasingly highlighted area that employers and college admissions counselors look at. And we want students to be entrepreneurial about it, be passionate about it, but that also builds that sense of community. The mentoring piece, opportunities for older students to mentor younger students. Sammy mentioned it today with the orientation program. We want to expand that. And also hold school programming that connects the shared valued outcomes to positive behavior. All of our principals do an excellent job with that. Dr. O'Hara has done a lot of work in that area this year. We want to bring that to other areas within all of our schools. The next category within positive relationships, normalizing self-respect and the appreciation of difference. Just a couple of quotes from a 9th grader. I really like the E3 squad and having teams in middle school. I think that would be good for the high school too, because I don't feel as connected to my teachers or classmates as I used to. Some typos sometimes in the surveys. A 10th grade student also shared what I mentioned before. I felt it was relevant here too, that she would love to have an Asian Appreciation Culture Month. So normalizing difference and the appreciation of normalizing self-respect and the appreciation of difference is a powerful concept, because I think often when we talk about this, it's been talked about in a way where it's one at the expense of the other. We don't believe that. We believe that our schools can be open spaces for students to learn about differences in the world, learn about different cultures, but also we want all of our students to walk out of school feeling good about themselves. And that's really important. We do not believe that that is the administration and the board. We don't believe that that's a zero-sum game, that we believe the two go hand in hand. How do you promote that? We are actually going to be administering a school climate survey to give us more data. I know we've administered a lot of surveys on this, and we believe that will be helpful. We are going to lead building walkthroughs, Dr. Smythe and I, with different school leaders. And we also, one piece of feedback that came directly from the Tri-States visit was to have a K through 12 approach like the middle school has for E3. We know in the elementary school, elementary teachers do that through morning meeting. We want to re-examine commons at the high school, which has evolved from one year to the next, especially COVID. And so we want to start looking at that within the tight time that we have, but build a K-12 framework for the space and what it means. Oftentimes in the past, we've had the time, but perhaps didn't have a whole district approach to it. So again, this is district work. We'll certainly be working with our school leaders, but it doesn't replace the work that our individual building leaders are going to be doing in a way that makes sense for them. And finally, something that we have done a lot of work on, especially our humanities curriculum directors, Ms. Small, Ms. Ritter, and Mr. Gordon have done great work in creating curriculum on civil discourse and how to have positive disagreement. Basically how to teach students to debate, deliberate, and disagree in positive ways. That is an active way of learning, deliberating materials. I remember a lesson that I hope I don't embarrass him, but a great lesson that Mr. Gordon, as a teacher, did involved grading the presidents and debating about early U.S. history presidents in early U.S. history and how you would rank them and how you would grade them. And that's deliberating, that's debating, but it's also deep learning. So this complements meaningful and academic growth, meaningful learning and academic growth as well, but it's also a transferable skill that is desperately needed in our world. This is an elementary teacher saying, in an effort to teach students to listen respectfully, empathize, reflect on a variety of positions, they must have access to literature that shares various perspectives, backgrounds, and beliefs. Students must learn to work with others, collaborate in groups, participate in book groups that focus on a variety of perspectives and cultures. Okay, just a few more slides to share. Another quadrant of the framework is making sure that our students, that we pay attention to their interests and strengths. Again, something that we pride ourselves here at North Shore. I believe we could be more deliberate, and I think some of the survey responses and data we found have suggested we could be a little more organized, intentional, and look through the system, and there are some gaps. I think this is a fifth grade students. I think I need people making videos on what they do and what they enjoy about the clubs. This will give and catch the eye of other students that have that interest. And I think we should make more creative clubs to expand their topics. Lots of people like different things, and it's not fair for everyone to get their interests, and they don't. And then a parent of an elementary, middle, and high school student said more opportunities to help shy students feel comfortable joining clubs. More outreach where current club members encourage students to join, maybe pitch in their club and homeroom, and buddy systems where older students help younger students. This involves all SVOs, and basically we want to look at doing an analysis of all clubs, seeing if there's gaps, listening to students. We've had a growth in students proposing clubs, especially at the high school level, which has been amazing. We want to look at developing community internship mentorship programs where community members come in and we have a fair, we make connections between high school students especially, who can then work in the community, intern, volunteer in a way that connects to their interests, perhaps their career interests. We also want to look at, Ms. Rodriguez and I talked about this a while ago, this notion of having majors in high school, having clusters of courses that students can take, and not in a rigid way, but I think that will help us to organize. I've often said, as we look at like some of the budgetary constraints, we want to do it in a way where we actually create opportunities. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I think this is the answer, really targeting what are those clusters of interest that students want. I'll give you an example. Business courses. We've had a huge increase in the demand in business courses. We need to look at how we're going to offer more of that. That's a huge area of need. And there are other areas like that as well. And finally, in our wellness quadrant, our final quadrant, certainly not least, mostly our students need help with managing distractions. We are in an unprecedented environment of distraction, and I see students seriously struggle with this. This is a high school teacher. We've heard, here's another big theme that came out of the coding, the interviews, the surveys, that is social media and technology, Chromebooks for young kids, big themes. And we, the principals and I, have started talking about cell phone usage and policies in school. We've started talking about, now that the emergency of the Chromebook is not needed, as much, thankfully. During the pandemic, Mr. K and I, the goal was it was like a war mission to get a Chromebook to every child. And Michelle Hall was delivering the Chromebooks. And now we have the luxury of being able to be more reflective, think about if we use those in more targeted ways, especially with our youngest students. I think that rolls in with the digital fluency and some of the other education. We want our youngest students to gradually learn about that. But I think also with that, it's education with parents. So restrictions in school, limits in school, but also working with parents more on the dangers of social media. The American Psychological Association just released a working paper on their recommendations for social media use, and a lot of warnings in there. We'll be sending that out to the community, but that paper itself and the survey responses definitely informed this plan. We want to embed self-empowerment and self-care topics into the counseling and health and physical education curriculum. Even things as concrete as injury prevention. Thanks to the support of the community, we will be able to have an additional part-time athletic trainer that will help some of our middle school athletes as well. And we think there's real possibility to grow in that area. Thank you to Mr. Lang for his recommendation on that. We also want to design opportunities for learning more about self-empowerment into the wellness departments at each school and parent university programs. We had a very robust discussion with Mr. Doherty and CASA about how they can support our wellness centers. That definitely falls into this work. And we also want students to start thinking about where they need to grow in terms of their own emotional regulation, their mindset, their resilience, getting them to think about their needs and their strengths as well. And finally, growth in skills for healthy living. This is a parent of a first grade student. Empowering children with learning to live a healthy lifestyle, cope with stress and anxiety, and build resilience is key. Wellness includes so many areas as well as emotional wellness. We want to look at developing a targeted mental and physical health professional partnership for professional development and referral for students. We're working through Wellness Committee to look at a partnership with LIU and their fine psychology department to see how they can benefit us through professional development, and for our students who need a referral where they could offer a low-cost option. So we're excited about that. We also want to continue to partner with CASA and use the health curriculum to provide positive decision-making skills, training, and prevention education. So those are our categories. I think it's important that is a lot of information. Again, we will post this, a lot of work to be done, some a continuation. But again, this is a big framework. I think our goal is to maintain the framework. One thing we do in education a lot is we have one initiative and then we do it for a year and then we leave and we go to another initiative. We believe that stability is really, really important, but we understand too that the specifics do have to change from year to year. So really having the lens that we've developed over a couple of years now of this North Shore Journey concept of the 4 quadrants, but then every year taking a deep dive to analyze, and this will become the end of year report we're recommending, to look at, questions such as how consistent are these experiences for students? How aligned are the experiences for students? How accessible are they for all students? How is student progress assessed? What's the role of intervention and differentiation to meet the diverse needs of individual students? And how are planned tasks, actions, and goals modified from year to year? And that's really the ultimate question. At the end of a year, using this framework, thinking of everything our leadership team is doing, the amazing work that they're doing with our teachers, and our teachers are doing with our students, and the work that Mr. Pappas, Dr. Smythe, and I are doing with our Board of Education, a whole year of that, where are we? And then how does that inform the goals for the next year within that framework? So we want to maintain the consistency of a framework while continuing to look through the lens of our students and their full journey through the system, and really try to maximize what they are thinking. It really is, as an educator, you need to be a mind reader. You have to really use diagnostics to get into the mind of a child, to know what they're experiencing, know what they're learning, and that is really the work. And the goal of the work is to get them to that mountaintop with all of the skills and the tools that they need to be able to discover their dreams, as cliche as it sounds, to be able to do what they want to do. That's our mission. That is our charge. And we think of the North Shore Journey as a promise to provide these assured experiences so that all students have that opportunity at the end of their journey here to say, I want to do this and I'm equipped to go in that direction. So that's the end of our presentation tonight, and we're going to have a discussion. Thank you very much. And I want to thank again the leadership team and Dr. Smythe and Mr. Pappas for all of your support throughout the journey of the North Shore Journey, which has been a couple of years long. Thank you.
Chris, we'll let you make your way back up here. I would just take issue with one thing you said, which is the district motto of discovering your dreams. I don't think is cliched at all. And I also think it speaks to the intentionality with which we do things here at North Shore. I don't think a lot of districts engage in this kind of self-study. I read through a lot of the feedback you got, and I commend you because it is It is ambitious to sort through all of that, especially when one comment says something with a passion, and then the next comment says exactly the other opposite side with the same degree of passion. To have to sort through that and put that all through the filter is integral in make sure this works for all stakeholders and eventually gets buy-in from stakeholders, knowing that you and your team have worked through the feedback. But it's ambitious, especially in your first year. Hopefully, this will be guidance for you as well. But I think that's one thing we do here is we take on big challenges. So with that, I will turn now that you're all settled up here. I just want to make sure I don't forget and to thank the entire administrative team for being here and for your role in this process, and of course for your central office team as well. I'll turn it over to trustees if you have any comments or thoughts.
Well, first of all, just want to thank you so much for, I mean, not only this presentation, but the incredible backup that you provided. I mean, just like President Ledmar said, just going through it was overwhelming for me, and and I didn't have to sort through it and dissect all of it. So thank you so much. It's so comprehensive and so important and so valuable. And I'm just so happy to see the work that you're doing, and I'm so impressed with it. My only question is really, how do you track? Like, what kind of project plan do you have in place and timeline for, I think everything on here to me is so equally important, but obviously has to be prioritized. But when do you roll out the MTSS plan, and how do you evaluating technology, I think is one of the topics we talked about, and figuring out if our youngest learners need Chromebooks, and how do you figure out when to do that, when to implement, those kinds of things. So, and again, I just want to say the meaningful and authentic learning, I just want to compliment you on that too, because, I see it with the examples in Dr. Smythe's backup, and it's always, it's wonderful. I love, seeing the work that the students are doing. And even at Seacliff School, I know the fifth graders just had a Holocaust survivor speak this week, and it was so incredible and so moving. And, all the feedback I heard from the children was, that they were just so moved by it. So I think those opportunities are so important. And I know you obviously realize how important they are, because you continue to push for them, and thank you for that.
Thank you so much. I just want to say, yeah, I think it is overwhelming when you look at the feedback and a lot of contradictory feedback sometimes you see, and the process of analyzing that data, and then we'll have the school climate survey too. That's going to be ongoing. We'll work through it as a leadership team to look at some of the specifics, and that will help inform the timeline. Some of these things like the MTSS plan have the leadership team and a committee has been working on. So that's near rollout. I think a lot of those things, those items that we mentioned on the district level in the presentation, we'll be interacting with next year. Some of them undoubtedly will become, it's going to take more time items, but I will work to give a better timeline on that, that you can see and respond to as well. But the intention is that we're going to roll out a lot of that work next year on the district level, and then evaluate it at the end. And I think that is the key. And I think I was in a presentation yesterday where our superintendent was saying the assessment of a strategic plan is the key to it not just being a piece of paper. So that's such a good point. And so we want to develop an annual survey that really captures that, and not only the survey, but better tools for analysis. Because I think that's one thing we're learning is with that amount and the divergence of responses, it is difficult. And so that'll be the big project for the year, is to really build an assessment plan that we can then bring as the end of year report and the recommendations for year 2 actions, or 2024, 25 actions.
Thanks, Lisa. Comments? Sure, Maria.
I don't think I volunteered. I think
I saw you moving your mouth. I felt like you were next, so
but
I'm just going
to.
to.
Absolutely. You know me, I'm always happy to talk. So yeah, just to echo the thanks. we all want to express our personal thanks because it is so clearly an enormous effort that you are all making constantly. And we are aware of it and very grateful for the reams of background material, which are really impressive and required. You mentioned, Dr. Z, that we do a lot of surveys. I actually think of the surveys, though they can be overwhelming. It's even when they're fun to read, some of them are really funny and fun to read. But I think of them as being somewhat analogous to the push we just tried to make for everybody to get out and vote. In order to make your voice heard, you have to participate. And the surveys are a lot like giving each of our areas of the community an opportunity to make their needs, their wishes, their desires, and their thoughts known for you to distill into this incredible framework. In addition to assessment, I was thinking sort of a little bit in the other direction as you were speaking too, that it's a powerful framework. And I think obviously the challenge for all of you is how does it translate on a daily basis as well into the classroom. I think of, and I just jotted a couple of notes down about that I just want to put in the mix as you're thinking about it. When you were talking about teaching students how to learn and helping them achieve joyful learning, which of course is so connected to engagement, it reminded me of a comment I've heard a few times from a certain group of seventh graders that I tend to listen to a lot in carpools, and about a lot of dependence on the use of slides. And you talked about a teacher once telling you, now take this and learn it. And you thought, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be doing, learning in the classroom. I think slides that are sort of given out and the students are asked to then work with the slides, not necessarily with a lot of interaction. It's again a little bit like that, and it's such a handy tool, but it's just one of those little niggly things that I think does affect the engagement and joy in learning. I want to thank you as I turn to the page to following you along with meaningful and authentic learning. I want to thank you for taking the incredible lesson of one of the many lessons we took out of COVID and actually never forgetting about the value of outdoor learning. It's so gratifying, along with all these other incredibly important things, to have that be recognized as a very important part of the value of it as an important factor in keeping students engaged, making sure that their wellness is constantly attended to, among other things. So it was wonderful to see that bulleted. And in fact, on the wellness page, where you're talking about healthy habits, I jotted down again outdoor learning and going back to the idea of how this all translates to small changes or small awarenesses in the actual on a daily level in the classroom. Taking stretch breaks, getting outside for 10 minutes, showing fewer movies and moving outside more often. Those were things that sort of that struck me. And finally, just to sort of again to the idea of the framework and in this larger picture of where we've come from, and acknowledging the impossible to overstate disruption that COVID caused and the effects of which we're still feeling. My final comment would be to ask, or how, and not for tonight's answer, but to assume that you have in mind as you're fleshing out the framework and finalizing it, how you build flexibility into it such that the next COVID level disruption, the next thing, the next pandemic, the next whatever that happens, which seems likely, we can, not to be a pessimist, but it looks like, it's the world we live in seems to speak to that we need to build that kind of forward preparation into our plans. And this is an incredible plan that I think, if you can perform a few more miracles in it, would benefit from a recognition of how some of these goals would not have to be diminished or even, God forbid, abandoned if we had a kind of another event of that magnitude thrust upon us. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I see Chris is he's typing his notes, so he's got it.
Say very quickly, I committed the slide. I had all these slides, and I'm having a flashback to a professor who once said, "Did you ever have a teacher who lectured to you about student-centered learning?" And I'm like, I just did it. So I'm sorry for that, but I hear what you're saying. And an acronym we used with the administrative and faculty team during COVID was VUCA. It's a military analogy for post-Cold War: volatility, uncertainty, chaos, and ambiguity. And we talked a lot about that when we came back that first year. And I feel like that is a good lens, I think, to put on top of this in terms of, are we preparing students for those situations? Because the world is becoming more VUCA, unfortunately.
You both other trustees? Sure, Lisa.
I'll echo some of my trustees who spoke before me that, in reading the backup material, there was such disparity. Of course, there were themes, but also disparate comments. And it's so impressive, Dr. Zublianos, how you've really approached it in such an erudite way. And I see the comments in this presentation. It really brought to life these things, and I didn't think it was going to be possible, to be honest. And I was so impressed. So thank you for that. I also loved reading in the comments, both from parents and students and staff, all the great things that we're doing. That we're doing this already. This is already great. That was such a repeated refrain, which was so encouraging. And then from some of the staff as well, thanks for asking. We love doing this stuff, and I appreciate the opportunity to share, which I loved reading. I jotted down a couple themes that I thought were interesting to just kind of highlight, but they're certainly captured here. The theme of collaboration, I thought, was really everywhere, from parents with teachers, from teachers in the building, from interdepartmental collaboration within students. Everybody's asking to kind of work together in new and innovative ways. And I thought that that's so encouraging as well, and such an opportunity to innovate in a way that maybe, and that we are not. So in some ways we are, but there's this real yearning there that came for me, and for my reading, came over repeatedly. I read a lot about related to that is about communication. So parents were asking in sometimes for, and again, this is just kind of themes, but parents were asking for more communication from the classrooms. Teachers were asking for more parent involvement. So there's a real push-pull about communication, and communication, again, that interplay, working with different departments, working within your department, opportunities to meet with different similar grade level teachers in different buildings, and communicate and have the opportunity to communicate and collaborate. The issue of bullying really came up a lot for me in my reading, and respect and how we treat each other. It seems like in all the cohorts, I really read a lot about that. And it seems that accountability for self and accountability from the school to hold people to not to repeat myself, but to hold people accountable for best behavior with each other is something that I heard requested in all the different cohorts, that to my reading, which I thought was really helpful. and that unstructured time, that magical, particularly in the younger grades, but also in the high school, people who had high school age kids, like the outdoor learning, the opportunities to really just be able to think outside of the box, that authenticity, which you definitely were able to capture in your presentation, which I so enjoyed. What else did I want to make sure I highlighted? The cross department. Sorry, I can barely read my own writing, which is a problem. Yeah, the kindness and respect. And I think it's just the time that people took to give really thoughtful comments, both students, parents, teachers, was I really learned a lot from the survey. And to Trustee Mosca's point, it is such a, an opportunity that parents, this is how we learn the needs of the community. And, I think we should continue, there's an upcoming survey opportunity to those listening. It can't be understated how important it is that people participate so that we really get the full picture. Because there's lots of different points of view. There's not consensus on a lot of different ways of thought and approaches in the community. And so what we hear is what we know. And so to really, I think it's worth repeating, even though Trustee Mosca said it, that it's so important to participate in these processes so that, we can be on this journey together with the best information. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Cashman. Any other, Andrea? Sure.
We'll go. As you were talking, I was reflecting a little bit about when I became a new mom, and I was convinced it was my job as a mother to turn her into something. And I had all kinds of crazy ideas. I was a scientist, an actress, at one point even an ice skater, and I failed miserably at all of it. And then I started to realize that's not your job as a parent. Your job is really to uncover the child within. And I think that's really should be the same philosophy of a school district, right? And as you go through this framework, I started to think that's really what we're doing, right? It's open-ended enough to sort of capture the child wherever they're at and wherever they're going. And I thought it was interesting, you sort of sold yourself short, because at one point you said this is a journey through the system, and it's really not, right? It's the beginning part of a child's journey in life. And where do kids spend most time? It's in school, right? And so what happens here in some ways is more important than any other place. And we're able to fill the gaps that are missing in other places in their lives. So thank you for that. There were a couple of things I wanted to highlight that I think were easy to miss. When I was reading through it last night, you had one assured experience as being academic proficiency. And then the next one was expert, joyful, independent learner. And I started to think about it. What are they? I don't get it. Why is expert here? Do we really want our kids to be expert? We're already addressing academic proficiency in the other experience. And then I thought, oh my God, you guys are brilliant. Because what you are really talking about there is not expert in content, right? But understanding who you are as a learner, being expert in how you learn and wanting to learn. And I just thought that was so brilliant, and I didn't want that to go by without anyone noticing. I was also curious about what you meant by normalizing self-respect. That was another one I started to think about last night. So I don't know if you just want to speak.
Sure. And the way I write it is a little awkward. I remember we talked about that in the fall. It kind of goes together. I think there's the concept of normalizing difference that I think is important, and that what I think I was trying to say in that, and when we've talked about this as a group, is that normalizing the appreciation of difference, that difference is normal. keep saying those two words, but that whether you're a teacher or a student, everyone around you is different in some way, and that's okay. And that there is strength in that. And that is something to be leveraged. I think about our students who come from different cultural backgrounds, who our other students who are not from those backgrounds have a world of opportunity by being around those students before they even go out into the world. I think as a teacher, and this is hard, and it really, both the expert learner, can't take credit for the expert learner and this, it really comes from the universal design framework. That language is, that we assume there's one way to teach something, but it's kind of an artificial construct. There is no student who's normal, and it's the brain and culture is just way too complex to say this is how I'm going to do it. So and then on a bigger level, it's really about normalizing that concept that I can feel good about myself and appreciate others at the same time, that those two things don't negate each other. And I do believe that our school leaders and our teachers are doing that work. We want to intentionalize it. We want to highlight it. We want to share best practices for how that's being done in our schools to make it more systematic.
I really think it's great because this idea of, oh, I want to respect you, we all sort of know about that, right? But this idea that, yes, in turn, I'm going to respect myself. And in respecting myself, I can honor your differences. I just think there's something really beautiful about that. And the idea that we have it in here is really great. I'm curious about this idea of assured experiences. I do always worry about school systems, and part of it is because I teach. This idea of standardization, I am not a fan of standardization because I think best teaching happens when people take advantage of their own strengths, and I always get nervous when things are too cookie cutter. So I don't know if you can just talk a little bit about the difference between those two things.
Sure. So we're trying to design the framework in a way that isn't like a step 1, step 2, step 3 framework, that it's a broader concept of considerations that we want our students to strive towards. We want all of our students to be exposed to. And that's going to look different in an 8th grade social studies class versus a 1st grade classroom. But we want that to be on the mind of individual teachers. But also it is taking that aerial view high up. And as we look at students as they're moving, from middle school to high school, or from elementary to middle school, and we kind of really look at how they're growing, are they getting those experiences when I ask those bigger questions? So it's really framed around bigger questions, how it manifests. True success in a strategic plan like this comes from the teacher and the principal and the chairperson kind of negotiating it with their students there. That freedom really is so necessary because you're sitting in front of 20 students who are so different. So if it's too structured, it can't work.
I think it's great. And I guess the final thing, and I don't know if it's embedded here at all, but this idea that like journeys are not straight lines, right? And that they're very indirect, and respecting that and making room for that, I think is important, just so that we respect people's own like personal evolution. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President McCary. Any other trustees? Oh, sure, Rich.
Thank you very much for all the work that you did on this. It's just mind-boggling. When I first started looking at this, I thought I was going to need a GPS with this journey. But you did a really great job in analyzing the data. I really appreciate the fact that you legitimize the views of all the stakeholders. And I'm very excited about it. So I don't really have anything to add other than thank you so much.
Thanks, Trustee Galati. Sorry.
Also thank the people who completed the surveys, because this was.
You're welcome. I fill one out.
Yeah, because all of this was gleaned from that. So
I did want to just mention, I think I've said it before, when we did the tri-state survey artifact collection, within an hour, we had like hundreds of responses from our teachers, and it was amazing. They did it again for this last survey, but our students too. We had over 1,000 student responses. We want to get those responses up though, too. It's important.
I don't have much to add. I just want to, one of my comments was building off of the last comment that, Vice President McCary just added, which is, I think there's a history in North Shore that we've talked about a little bit up here of that balance. And for me, my background at business school is the idea between sort of a more structured organization versus a more organic organization. And this North Shore schools in the past, I would say, tended toward the very organic, where things were a little were certainly on the opposite end from overly structured. And I think thinking of this whole journey cohesively will be part of the solution to that. Because vertically, we want to think about a student's traversing these buildings from UPK or K all the way through that 12th grade year, and that path they travel should have that North Shore wash. It shouldn't be exactly the same because, as you very well recognize, each child has their own talents and strengths and dreams and interests, and the goal of it shouldn't be, this isn't the Army where everyone's going to learn how to do the same 12 things or 50 things or whatever else it is, but it is giving them that North Shore wash, but also horizontally having some cohesion as well. So whether it's the 3 different elementary school buildings or whether it's 4 sections of Spanish, in 10th grade, that those students are learning to the best of their strengths, but at the end receive those experiences that they need and that education that we expect, both in terms of the curriculum that's mandated, but also in terms of what's going to prepare them for their tools in life. I think to me, I guess the way I termed it is they're all going through the same journey, but they're not all headed to the same destination. So the trick is to be able to feed them in that way. The only thing I wanted to add is that we are a small enough school district that we should be able to identify those students who are off track from that journey individually and be able to give them the resources they need, whether it's the intervention you talked about, the MTSS and other forms, academic, from the STAR testing and all the different levels. But I think what we look for as a board is for our administrative team to be able to recognize, hey, there's 210 kids in this class, and there are 5 or 6 kids who just aren't getting what North Shore has to offer. Every year, or at least the last 2 years, when I go to graduation, I speak and I hand the diplomas to each of these students. I know so many of these kids. I see their names for so many of these kids, but there's always a handful of kids that I've never seen before, never heard their name before, and that may just be that our paths haven't crossed, and but it also could be that those kids come to school here and then they go home, and they're not really engaged or bound to all the different offerings that are here. And if we can identify who those kids are, we can at least give them a shot and pull them in and try our best, because all these things we're doing, if the kids aren't motivated and don't care and don't have supportive homes that are going to be forcing them or some version of that to avail themselves of the opportunities, they won't end up at the destination that they could potentially reach. So that's my challenge, is that with all this looking, to make sure that there aren't students who fall through the cracks, who don't miss out on the journey that you very well laid out for them. So I appreciate it. I thank my fellow trustees. Again, thank the administrative team very much. And I think with that, we will close this portion of our discussion and move on to public comment. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Z. Public comment. We now invite anyone from the community who would like to, and by the way, the administrative team is welcome to stay, but it is school tomorrow. So
thank you guys for being here.
Feel free to head out if you want. Everyone's certainly welcome. Regarding public comment, anyone can just come to the podium, just state your name, town of residence, and address the board.
Okay.
Yeah, the mic, just get a start going, and then
okay.
it picks you up.
Oh, there you go. Hi, I'm Jen Mellis. I live in Glen Head. I have a 9th grade daughter at the high school, and I was hoping to this evening talk to you guys, as you mentioned earlier, to continue the discussion about the weighting policy for the Regents exams. You hit on many of the points, but I think some of them bear repeating, especially in light of the really in-depth, well thought out, dynamic, multidimensional presentation you guys just gave. And a lot of the themes that I heard from it seem wildly out of sync with the current policy. So the current policy states that at North Shore, we give 18% weight to the Regents exams. That is the most that I have found in my research for pretty much any district. And it's actually equivalent to an entire quarter's worth of work for a high school student. So the message behind that is that 3-hour testing window in North Shore presently is the same as an entire 10, 12, 13 week period of time over a quarter that the students are putting in. So that, I think, obviously, is problematic, and it's something that may have been out of our minds because I don't think it's actually been in place probably since June of 2019. That was probably the last time, we lived with that. Like you all said before, the world is a different planet between, I think of things as before and after, right? So when you roll all of that together and you think of the 18% for the Regents and then another 10% for the midterm, that's the current policy. So what's happening at the high school is 28% of a child's final average in a course is based off of 2 tests that occur just over 2 days. I don't have to tell you all the many, many things that could happen to someone on that day. That could be the day that they found out the evening before their parents were getting a divorce, or they woke up feeling horrible, or like the way I sound, they suffer from allergies horribly this time of year, which coincides perfectly with APs and Regents. So there's a lot of things that could happen. So in general, I would love for that to be part of your mission, this journey, this experience that you guys have been talking about. But the more pressing issue, and you did say it before, which is so out of sync in my mind, is that New York State is continuing the special appeal process for June testing and August testing. So what I really think about in that situation is how, luckily the student who gets between the 50 and 64, which would have typically been a failing score, will now have the option of, passing and earning the Regents credit. And they'll have that special appeal designation. That special appeal does not go into their final course year-end average. So what sticks out to me is that there could be many situations where the student who gets the special appeal might actually sort of be better off than the student who busts their butt studying for it, but maybe unfortunately gets like a 65, 66, 67. That student who gets that 67, let's say, and maybe was maintaining a B in a course for the year, could now find themselves in a situation where that, because it's a whole quarter's worth of weight, has brought them down to a C, or the student who had the C is now a D, D to an F. You know what I'm saying? So those are real situations that could occur. And for me, that doesn't sit right at all. So in response to the special appeal still being in effect, as you touched upon before, many districts are trying to reconcile that with continuing the no harm or reduce harm policy, whatever you'd like to label it, where the student's Regents grade would only perhaps help, not hinder, their final average. I think that's fair. Many of our neighboring districts, Roslyn, Jericho, Syosset, Plainview, Oyster Bay, et cetera, they are all moving forward with the no harm policy for this year, again, directly in response to the special appeals. I am aware that maybe there is some people may have this thought that, well, what about accountability? Right? I've heard that argument before. I get it. I'm in education as well. I speak to teachers all day. I understand. However, as a parent, as an educator, I would argue our kids are accountable every day on so many different levels. They are accountable by showing up every day to school, ready to learn, ready to engage, doing their homework night after night, attending extra help sessions, putting their all into their extracurricular activities. Our kids care about their performance. They are held accountable. And interestingly, I think it was in a conversation with one of the administrators at the high school, they shared that we did have the no harm policy last year, and I believe statistically our Regents scores went up. I think they said we had an uptick in our Regents scores. So that alone should show us that our kids, regardless of what the outcome is, our kids care. They're going to put their all in. The last point I want to hit upon, and maybe it's always in my mind because I happen to be a high school guidance counselor. So I unfortunately live, sleep, eat, breathe college admissions. So it's always running somewhere through my mind. I have been a high school guidance counselor at a high achieving district for the past 14 years. Every year I help about 50 to 60 seniors through that highly nerve-wracking, extremely stressful process. You know, it's stressful for everyone involved. And what I can tell you is, unfortunately, we are living in a very ultra competitive and really unpredictable world right now when it comes to college admissions. And I cringe when I hear myself say these things, but they are true. We're in a situation where every point on a student's transcript and GPA actually does matter, especially in light of the fact that almost every major college and university still remains test optional as far as SATs and ACTs. So the byproduct of that shift in the way they review a student means they are looking hypercritically at the GPA and transcript. That 18%, believe it or not, can really impact a student's final average. That final average, that GPA in the current situation we're in could be the difference not only between, you know, getting into a certain school or being denied from a school, it can impact merit-based scholarship money offers, which is so real to so many families. So many people make their decisions based off of, you know, what is going to offer me the best possible situation, especially in today's economy. You guys touched on inflation before. We're all dealing with that. So these are real life factors when it comes to what could our student outcomes be. You also mentioned before proudly, and it's awesome that this is the case, that we have a lot of student athletes. As you know, there are a lot of people who have hopes of playing maybe Division I or Division II sports in college. There is a process for that. The NCAA Eligibility Center does have GPA requirements for both D1 and D2 athletes. So you could have students whose hopes are hanging on by a thread, and then that one shift or so in points could be the difference of them getting through the clearinghouse of the NCAA or not. So those were the points I just wanted to make. I do believe that our students deserve the same level playing field as their competitors, which is the reality. They're going to be up against the kids from our neighboring districts. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
And nothing more important than hearing from a student.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ava Maffei. I'm 14 years old and a freshman at the high school. The fact that a Regents is worth a whole quarter shocks me. I work so hard in one quarter to get the grades that I do to be on high honor roll. Throughout the quarter, there are some tests that I do great on, but others there's just an off day. Whether it's anxiety, pain from a medical issue, or me just not being able to keep my eyes open from allergies, a test can easily go the wrong way. There's no way to tell if the Regents will be on an off day or not. My parents have always told me that for college, I'm either going to a SUNY or getting a scholarship. My chances of getting out of New York and that scholarship get thinned out when I have a disadvantage. When I work just as hard or harder than kids from another school nearby, but my final grade and GPA gets hurt because of our school policy, I can get beat out for that scholarship. As annoyed as I get when I think about it for me, I get even more upset when I think about my sister. My younger sister has dyslexia and works 10 times harder than I do to keep her straight A's. She's working hours every day and she's only in 7th grade. She'll be taking the Regents next year. If all those hours she works goes to waste because of one test, it'll be heartbreaking. As a school, you should be wanting our GPAs to go up, which is why it makes sense to have the Regents count if it's above our average for the year. We know that the Regents will be on our transcript regardless and will always be motivated to do well on it. But if it's below, our chances for a successful future are getting smaller, and that reflects on this school district. Thank you.
Thanks, Ava.
Thank you, Ava.
I also want to take the opportunity to thank you for being able to speak tonight.
I'm sorry, just the name of town of residence.
Oh, I'm Leslie Mandel, Glen Head. I'm the mom of a 10th grade son and a 7th grade daughter. Like Jen and Ava, I am here tonight to request that we reconsider the policy that weighs our midterms, Regents, and final exams. But I'm also here to ask that we reinstate the no harm policy for this year. As the parent of 2 students who enjoy sports each season in their school, I'm always so appreciative of the support North Shore shows our athletes. as a district who supported a proposition this year to continue to support our athletes on the field and in the dance studio. What I am looking for tonight is for our students to be supported by the Board of Ed off the field and be allowed to maintain the same competitive edge that students in our neighboring high-achieving schools whose boards have already approved to move in this direction and go with the no harm policy for June. Just as a reminder, those schools are Syosset, Jericho, Roslyn, Oyster Bay, and Plainfield. We are not looking to take away accountability for our students or to coddle our kids. We are simply looking for you to level the playing field so our North Shore students can compete with students from other blue ribbon high achieving schools that surround us as they apply to college. If you ask a coach, accountability is beyond what just happens in a game. It's who's showing up each day and giving 100%. Practice, games, the off season, all of it. We teach our children that what they do in and out of the classroom each and every day matters too. Part of what I have loved about living in North Shore with my family for 11 years, and truthfully, I'm a North Shore graduate, so I lived here much longer than that, is that I always believed that we felt that whole child approach to education is what is important. The reality is a whole child approach to education does not equate a quarter's worth of work to 1 3-hour test. The current policy is in direct opposition to this philosophy. For many of us in this town, as inflation continues to impact what families can save, coupled with the rising cost of college, students are making more of their decisions about where to attend college based on the financial packages they receive. The unintended consequences of the current policy could impact someone like my son in a number of ways. My son typically scores a little below his GPA on the Regents. With these scores factored into his GPA, it could skew his transcript in a negative way that doesn't truly capture the work he puts in each quarter. In addition, his lower GPA could not only decrease his chance for acceptances, but for scholarship money. If the Board of Ed does not make the changes we are seeking to reinstate the no harm policy, you may be single-handedly becoming a factor in what our students lose out on, as they will be competing for these opportunities against our high-achieving neighboring districts whose boards have already reinstated this. We elected each of you to help support our students in schools. Please don't work against us at this important time. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Good evening.
Ms. Rupp, sorry.
I did want to just say one thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just that in terms of process, it would be an administrative recommendation. So that same point taken very well. But I just wanted to say that I wanted to own that decision as an administrative recommendation. We're going to take all this feedback and go back tomorrow and look at everything.
Sorry for cutting you off, but
Sorry.
I could hear her starting to talk, so I want to make sure.
Let me make sure this is on. Good evening. My name is Amanda Fox. I am a Glenwood Landing resident and have a 10th grader. This is the first time that I'm addressing the administration and the board, which is actually quite shocking considering probably all the amounts of emails and phone calls that have gone on over the last 10 years. But I did feel it was appropriate to come tonight and just talk a little bit about the same topic. So I'm here as a parent, but also as an educator as well. And I'm on a little bit of the different end of things. I've worked in higher education for the last 22 years, and the last 10 of those 22 being in administration. So I completely empathize with the plight of administrators and that it is not always easy to make decisions that will please everyone. I also understand the challenges and how much work it is to code all of that qualitative data. So it's very impressive what you shared with us earlier. But I just want to talk a little bit about what I've done over the course of my career and how it relates to the way that I feel about where my son is right now. I've been the first contact for thousands of high school graduates entering a college environment. And for me, really, it has been a privilege. These students have come from different backgrounds, cultures, socioeconomic statuses, and their academic experiences and their outcomes have also varied. And these variations can largely be attributed to their difficulty performing well on cumulative and standardized tests. Many of the students I work with are high achieving, they have outstanding academic records, and they're eager to exceed. But Regents and SAT scores really have never provided a complete picture of what a student's capable of. And I am very proud to work for an institution that takes this into consideration. I was also very grateful last year, just in the interest of my own child, that North Shore did the right thing by not choosing to implement a grading policy that would have caused any of our students academic harm. So we talk a lot about accountability, and that word is used often and loosely, and I think sometimes we don't even really stop and think about what that word actually means. So for anyone who's curious, because I was, the definition is an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. These parents here talked a little bit about it, just a little bit about my own son. He has overcome enormous challenges to achieve whatever academic success he has found. He shows up every day with a positive attitude. He's the best student and athlete he can be. He works hard in the classroom and on the court. He goes to extra help. He studies for quizzes and tests the best he can. He cares deeply about his grades, and he desperately wants to succeed. He takes responsibility for his actions. He is accountable. But academic success comes more naturally, just like we heard from this young lady here, to some students than others. We all know this as educators, and in describing him, my words will likely resonate with many of you as you think about your own kids. He has to work harder than some of his peers. His learning challenges put him at a disadvantage, and cumulative grading does not serve him well, and I know there are many other students like him. His final grade should reflect the work that he puts in all year. The concept that 28% of his overall average for a course will be based on 2 exams is heartbreaking for me when I see how hard he works. And he is hyper aware of the weight that these exams have. And this awareness causes anxiety that produces physical effects. He is more than a midterm and a regents or a final. Ask his teachers. In fact, ask all of your teachers. And I suspect that they will tell you the same thing about all of their students. The ones who have a desire to succeed, just like these other parents said, that will be accountable. Just a side note, which I think is really valuable and important. Last night was the commencement ceremony for the students at my institution. Thousands of graduates and their families attended this event, and it really is always a beautiful time of year for us. Our valedictorian began his speech with a question. He asked every person seated in Nassau Coliseum to think of a person, event, or experience which made them feel incapable. He had asked them to hold on to that thought as he shared his experiences as a student. This young man had a learning disability that went undiagnosed. He suffered from anxiety and depression, as so many of our students do, so many more now. He was written off as a bad student and as someone who would never be successful because he could not perform within the confines of a traditional educational system. He is now the valedictorian and off to University of Michigan, which is just so wonderful for us to see. So if you asked my son or any of these people's children, or perhaps your own, what would make them feel incapable? That answer might be a poor grade for the entire year because of 2 tests. And all I have to go back to is this young lady's statement here. So it's just so important that we all come here and share these thoughts. Administrative decisions are very difficult, and I understand that. And we are grateful for the work and the time that you are all putting in. I think we're all aware that with many schools converting to this test optional admissions procedures, we need to really consider what this means for our students. And I go back to the guidance again. I work for the State University of New York. We get our direct guidance from SUNY. And under no circumstance do we intentionally oppose their guidance by implementing a discretionary policy that could be punitive. And I would ask the same of you, if this district gets your guidance from the New York State Department of Education, why would we implement a policy that could harm our students when they are clear that Regents exams are not required nor recommended to impact the overall grade point average? I know we've said it, I'll say it again. Over the past 2 weeks, we have learned that many of our neighboring blue ribbon districts have moved forward with reinstating the no harm policy. And in the best interest of all of our students, I ask you to please consider doing the same. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Amanda. I want to give the superintendent a couple minutes. Any other people for public comment on this particular topic? Okay, Chris, do you want to, because I know some folks are newer to public comment. It's public comment. So we hear this, we appreciate you coming here. I will tell you, I believe I speak for the board in saying that it is, even though this is a difficult situation, it is somewhat how do I put this? I think it's the reason that we're up here as trustees. We ran knowing that there are situations like this and questions like this that face communities that involve education, as opposed to so many things involving public health crises and politics and other things that we didn't necessarily know were going to be facing us from this. So this is a very helpful conversation, and I appreciate you coming here to speak tonight. I want to hear. I have a couple questions for Dr. Z about this, but I'll let you go first and see.
No, it's first of all, I want to thank you for speaking and for all the well thought out and compelling points that you're making. We always love it when educators, but also students, come to the podium. So please come again. You know, during COVID, I worked a lot on the online learning. It was really a blessing to be able to be a part of that. And we were all trying to figure it out. I remember, and you probably remember too, that the first 2 weeks with other assistant superintendents on the NADCO calls, trying to figure out how we were going to design that. And we would go in divergent ways and then confer. We worked with a consultant at the time. And the one question she asked is, you know, you can't compel them to come to a Zoom. You know, in other words, there is all of this fallout, emotional, academic from COVID that our kids are, to some extent, depending on their grade, really still struggling with. We've made great strides, but also COVID raised all these other bigger questions about attendance and engagement. And do we have to start asking why kids want to come to school? And also certainly for grading and assessment. And at its core, what is the point of a cumulative assessment? Somehow, as educators, we need to know that students have mastered material and they can transfer that material. And that's what we're really trying to gauge and to measure. But it certainly is, it raised the immediate and the long-term questions about how we weigh grades and grading policies. And so the one thing I want to assure everyone is that we are going to do a deep dive into grading policies and structures, not just weighting, but also consistency within and across departments and buildings. I think it's an opportune time to do that, to have those conversations, and we will certainly begin this summer. You know, so I did want to mention that the bigger picture of all of this, but also just to let you know how seriously we take the deliberations, the process that Mr. Contreras and Mr. Doherty have followed, and the high school administration and directors in terms of talking to their teachers, talking to each other, talking with us. And we look forward to very, you know, in very short order, coming back and communicating out to you all.
Thank you, Dr. Z. Other comments from the public? Doesn't have to be on this topic. Close public comment. Thank you again for coming, and we'll continue with our meeting. I will ask for a motion on action item 12, which are sundry personnel issues. Is there a motion? Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second? Thank you. Thank you. You got to speak up. There's a rustle of the exodus, but any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Action 13, acceptance of election results from the 2023 budget vote and election of trustees. Is there a motion? A second as well. Any comments or questions? I will not. Sorry, did you want to say that? I will not get tired of repeating this every year, but thank you to our district clerk who ran a very tight ship on election day. It is always election day, you know, because there's always a few expectedly unexpected events that you handle with aplomb, and I appreciate that. This process of voting is so important. It's so huge a part of our democracy, and this conversation we have in this community, which, as we all know, you know, fluctuates between very fact-based and very focused on what the actual issues are to sometimes a little off track. But I do think that the raising of awareness, the engagement of the community, and the involvement of people in this process says a lot. And I know Dr. Z mentioned that it was close, and I think that many elections in this world are close these days. But I do think that for a complicated three proposition ballot, I think there was a lot of engagement on the behalf of the community to get involved, to get their answers, and to learn what we were actually deciding. And so I am gratified that we did have such a good turnout, and that there was a clear result, and we can now move forward as a district to next year's budget, which Chris said you're already working on. So again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to Betty. Thank you to the poll workers, and thank you to the community who showed up. Any other comments or questions on the election? Oh, and by the way, even though it was unopposed, congratulations to Trustee Galati and to Vice President McCary for coming back on board. Thank you both. I will call the vote. All in favor of acceptance? That's unanimous. Thank you. Action 14, a little more mundane, a resolution to change the date of our reorganizational meeting from, I believe it was July 6th, and now it will become July 10th, a Monday night. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any comments or questions? I know, I think a lot of people with kids in
I
schools.
want to know why we're changing the note. Just kidding.
I know, I was going to say the person needs to be shamed publicly.
No. Look, I think the reality,
Just kidding.
this board was able to, everyone was flexible, was able to find a date that worked. In the past, I've been a requester, but this year I am simply going to be a vote yes on changing the date. Any other comments? All right, thanks, trustees. See you then, if we all vote to approve. There we go. All right, thank you. Action 15, which is a different note entirely, but what I'm very excited about, which is the acceptance of several donations. And on this one, I'm going to read through what they are because I think it's so important and we're so appreciative. First, we're accepting a donation of $8,836 to North Shore High School PTO to offset the cost of senior prom, which is so appreciated. Hope everyone got the flowers and the various fundraising events to make that possible. B is an acceptance from North Shore CASA, the Coalition Against Substance Abuse, of wellness boxes, stickers, stress balls, mini plush toys, hand clappers, and egg shakers, musical triangles, and medical kazoos, and scratch and sniff taste stickers for all three elementary schools at a value of $2,205. That's not insignificant. Stickers were a lot less when I was a kid, but there you go. C is acceptance of a donation from Peter Thorne of a bass fiddle, which I looked up, and it's basically just what we think of as a bass, stand-up bass, the largest of the strings. Acceptance of a donation from the North Shore Women's Club to the North Shore High School of $237 for the Excel program at the high school. E is acceptance of donations from the Love Your Neighbor project, which entertained much of the community this weekend, but also thought of us by giving $500 to the North Shore High School Life Skills program for the Seacliff Garden, and the Seacliff Elementary School Garden Club to be used for the garden. And finally, but certainly not least, is donation of $500 from the Equitable Foundation to North Shore to be used for professional development, and a scholarship, which will be, I can name the student, right? Which will be awarded to Abby Mailer and matched to her school. So I'll ask for a motion on all of those. And a second? Comments?
Totally cool. Thank you.
It really does speak to how many people in this community in so many different ways do their part to support us all together. Again, elections sometimes bring out division in the community, but they can also be about reconciliation of the community. And this is some great way we start. So I'm heartened by all of this spirit of altruism. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action 16, approval to dispose of inventory. Well, we're really going highs and lows on the mundaneometer. Take a motion. Thank you. And I think I heard a second as well. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Action 17, which is the approval of a resolution regarding New York State Department of Healthcare and Mental Hygiene Worker Bonus. Is there a motion? And a second?
Second.
I think if you don't mind, Chris, I can ask you or Jamie to give a very quick overview of this.
Okay. I guess it was about a year and a half ago they developed this healthcare worker bonus, and as part of that bonus, we're required that the district isn't paying the bonuses. The bonuses are coming from New York State Health Department, but we are required to provide those bonuses. They flow through the district to various healthcare workers, not only our own employees, but we were also required to file for those bonuses for some of the contract workers that work within the district with our students, healthcare workers, whether they be nurses, therapists, etc. So this particular resolution is for the purposes of allowing us to pay those individuals through our books and records, primarily payroll, for the purposes of providing them with the bonuses that New York State will give to us.
The flow through. So even like the Social Security and all those cover, that all gets tallied up and reimbursed.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jamie. Any other trustee comments or thoughts? All right, all in favor? Aye. Action 18, which is approval of 2 change orders. Is there a motion? And a second? Thank you. Comments, questions? All in favor? Aye. I'll take a motion of 19 and 20 together, which are instrument repair bid and Northwest Nassau Co-op transportation bid. Is there a motion? Those 2. Thank you, Rich. Second. Thank you. Comments, questions on 19 and 20?
Question I did not get to ask earlier. I apologize, not ahead of time. I don't have it quite in front of me, but I think in the case of the music instrument repair bids, we're not required to take the lowest bid, because it looked like it isn't the lowest bid that we've taken.
It's the lowest. Well, it's the I guess we are not required to take the lowest bid. I guess the easiest way of saying it. It's the best bid, and it may be based on the different instruments, so there could be fluctuations. Overall, one could be lower than the other, but there could be items in there that are higher.
Right. Okay, I figured that it worked out that way, but it just didn't look it in the raw data.
It was the lowest bid for woodwind and brass. I think it was just for strings that it wasn't the lowest bid. However, it was the lowest percentage for parts, if I'm reading it correctly.
Yes, I noticed. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. I'm glad we found responsible bidders that we're happy to work with as well, because no bids are supposed to as well.
It's notable that it went, I guess the request went out to something like a dozen and only 3 or 4 came in. So,
the wide net?
Not a lot of choice there. Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, I'll call the vote on 19 and 20. All in favor? Aye, thank you. Action 21, which is approval of health services agreements with North Shore and Hempstead and North Shore and Manhasset. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. And a second? Comments? Discussion? Call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Action 22, which is approval of special education services agreements. Thank you. And a second? Comments? All in favor? Aye. And finally, in terms of actions, number 23, approval of IEPs. Motion? Sorry, is there a motion? I should ask. I should say. Sorry, it sounded like I was making a motion. And the second? Rich, you got it. Thank you. Comments or questions? Favor? Aye. Okay, it's not early, but we will go to board committee reports, so we'll keep them tight.
An incredibly tight one. I'll do district-wide safety first, and just the highlight of that meeting is that the committee has approved the district-wide safety report, so it will be coming to the board next.
Oh, I can't be that tight.
Shortest I can make. Wait till I get to LAC, but I'll make up for it. Yeah.
I have wellness, but Andrea, if I forget anything, jump in. We met on April 24th and May 15th. So since our last board update, at that first meeting, we talked about the youth development survey and the results. We discussed how to educate parents about vaping and the ease of access to vaping and marijuana. This is coming out of those development survey results. Also about alcohol use with parents' guardians' permission. And what more can we do to give children alternatives to substance use, like game nights, open gym nights. And then we also discussed the CASA grant money, which we approved today in the in the agenda, that helps us push positive coping skills and wellness. At that second meeting, we discussed the possibility of staff wellness workshops. We discussed the summer TENS program, the committee structure, so how wellness will now be broken down by mental health, nutrition, and physical health, and each topic will have designated dates, like specific meetings. We'll talk about each one of those topics. We talked about how the APA released the guidelines on social media usage, which Dr. Z mentioned earlier. Also, the governor held a youth forum on mental health, and some of our high school students were scheduled to attend. Also, survey results, how can we capture more data and more accurate data? And at the next meeting, we talked about inviting students to solicit their feedback on the surveys and social media usage.
Thank you very much. Andrew, you got it. Okay, good. Who else would like to go? I guess I will try to do construction steering as quickly and tightly as we can. The solar panels are, there's one area in the high school that they need to repair, so they're going to be working on that hopefully over the summer. That's the goal, and then we can install the panels there, but other installation has been going on around the district, which is great. They're going to get bids for they're looking at, did the bid open yet for the HVAC, for the balancing and testing? I'm not sure, but we're close on that.
I think they're in the process of rebidding it based on it, yes.
Okay. Phase one is pretty much of the construction project, pretty much done. Phase two is a lot of work going to be going on over the summer, less in scope than in the past. The high school library is very close. The front entrance of the high school, we're really hopeful over the summer. What else is going on? The big thing, it's not just the high school entrance, but the security vestibule. Sorry. No, please.
The fine and performing arts
Yes.
rooms, the band room, orchestra room, choral room.
So it'll be a busy summer for us as well.
Dave,
Yes.
just I have an answer to your bid question. The bid, I think the new bid date was actually yesterday.
Great.
They haven't been opened yet, I guess, but they've just come in.
Thank you. We talked a little bit about the freshly voter approved modification of the capital reserve and the desire to get the turf field done as soon as possible. The administration is working to do that. It's obviously we can't go ahead until we can't contract with a firm until the voters approve it. But I know the next day Chris was on the phone with them and is trying to facilitate that as much as possible. So hopefully that as soon as they can get there. The repair reserve, we are replenishing that as of fund balance at the end of the year, hopefully.
That's right.
Let's see what else I have here. The next meeting, exactly. The Glen Head Maintenance Portable is an item that is a part of our infrastructure that was damaged by a fallen tree, which is being completely paid for by insurance. I'm not going to throw a number on it, but it is very close to being done. It's north of the Glen Head School, up the hill, before you get to the antique shop. If anyone wants to go by there, you'll see it. But it's going up nicely. It's a prefabricated building, and it's a space where a lot of people in our team can do fabrication and can do important work. The electronic sign that everyone talks about is moving forward. We're waiting on some SED approval and waiting on approval from the local localities. They're just going to give it the thumbs up. I believe that is it.
I do have another report for LAC, but I have just 4 or 5 highlights. Since my last report, one of our members who's worked closely with Jamie, has produced a report addressing the ability of our district to self-finance yearly tax gaps from reserve funds and proposed legislative options to be explored. I think those, he's available still for back and forth research with Jamie. Did you want?
Topics are being discussed among other districts and other groups as well. So he was so valuable in the information he provided, and
Glad to hear that. We're also actively, sort of summarizing, pulling together notes regarding the changes to the IDA law and keeping a close eye on Governor Hochul's proposed housing compact, even, given all of the conversation and push and pull that's gone on, and keeping an eye on it as an issue that we must continue to monitor, even given that it's sort of seems to be in abeyance for the moment. We did, as everyone knows by now, regretfully had to cancel legislative night since all our legislators were still in Albany on the night that we had scheduled. And although we did make a real effort to find another date, there simply just wasn't enough time in the calendar to get them all here on the one day that seemed remotely possible for our district. So we're hoping to be able to pull it together for a fall date, still to be determined. The next actual report that I'll give to the committee for LAC will actually be a final written report like I did last year, like the group did last year, where we'll summarize all the work from the year and any outstanding deliverables. And finally, I just want to mention, thanks to Trustee Cashman actually sending me the link to look at it. I followed up on the listening sessions that the state is now conducting for the Environmental Bond Act. And there will be one recently announced on Long Island, and we will have one or more of us be there for that. We'll report back. I think there was a discussion in construction steering about possibly looking for some of that grant money for septic systems for the district improvements. Seemed like a great idea to me, and I think there might be other opportunities there that we'll certainly be looking at. So that'll be on our next report. Well, no, it won't be on the next report because it's not happening till August. But anyway, it'll be on a future report. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
I have athletic advisory, and Rich, if I forget anything, feel free to jump in. We met on April 24th. We talked about updating the athletic offerings, looking into girls flag football, ice hockey, crew team, badminton. These are all thrown around as possibilities, and perhaps trying out through intramurals first. We talked about the issue with some JV teams having few substitutes because many are called up to play varsity, and Dr. Z said he would look into the numbers there. Dr. Z also gave a budget overview. This was right before the vote, so he explains the budget and the capital reserves. And it was mentioned in that conversation that more storage would be helpful for athletics. Talked about the scoreboard. And also the Booster Club updated the committee on their purchases. They purchased benches for the softball fields, 2 for JV, 2 for varsity, a warming oven for the concession shack, and flags to decorate the fields.
Thank you. Other committee reports? Thanks again, trustees. Unfinished business? New business? Okay, please.
Just had I was in Dr. Smythe's backup. There was such compelling information in the seal of biliteracy data that I couldn't let the meeting pass without highlighting. I was just really floored by the growth from 2017 to 2023 of how many students, and that it's just, the growth is so incredible to me, that we've gone from, somebody else tell me, but in 2017, there was 1 in French, and this year was 12. In 2017, 3 in Italian, 27 this year. Mandarin had none until no, that's not true. 2020 had one. This year, 15. Spanish, 50, doubled. Latin, 10, which I loved. Greek was one. Some of these other that we don't even offer. So I wasn't sure. That congratulations to those students. But I just really felt the need to put it on the record how exciting that is.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add that Ms. Aguiar and the whole department has really prioritized this effort, and they're not going to stop till every student gets the seal. And like you mentioned, they've really made it a priority to let kids or make it possible for kids to achieve the seal, even in languages that we don't offer. And some students are achieving the seal in multiple languages, so it really is a testament to their work.
I'm glad to highlight this, Lisa. I also think, Dr. Smythe, it sort of highlights also a lot of things we talked about in the journey, and about students having that that sense of pride in their own identity and who they are. So to have students get the seal of biliteracy in languages that one of them here I didn't even know was an actual language is really a celebration of that that they could bring to the whole community and bring to their peers. So it's great.
We went from 4 last year who had more than one language to double that, 8 this year. It's just really, these numbers can't lie, and they're astounding.
I'm just curious, once they get that seal, not that this is why they're doing it, but does that exempt them from language in college, or does it mean that they are in an accelerated class?
Doesn't necessarily exempt them, but it is useful for their application to college. So it's another piece that will help them with college acceptances and potentially placement as well.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And Dr. Smythe. Other new business? All right, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.